In the early 20th century, the ancient land of Persia was in turmoil. The once great Qajar dynasty had fallen into disarray, and the nation was plagued by foreign influence, internal strife, and a sense of lost grandeur. Amid this chaos emerged a man of humble origins, Reza Khan, a determined military officer with a vision for his homeland. Reza Khan was a formidable figure, towering in both stature and ambition. In 1921, with the support of his loyal soldiers, he marched on Tehran and seized control of the government, determined to restore order to Persia. His rise was swift and unstoppable. Within a few years, he had consolidated power, and in 1925, he declared himself Shah, founding the Pahlavi Dynasty and ushering in a new era for Persia, now called Iran. As Reza Shah Pahlavi, he embarked on a mission to drag Iran into the modern world. The old ways, he believed, had to be swept aside. He built roads, railways, and factories, laying the groundwork for a modern economy. Schools and universities were established, and the influence of the clergy and tribal leaders was curtailed. Reza Shah was determined to make Iran a nation that could stand tall among the great powers of the world, but modernization came at a price. Reza Shah's methods were often harsh, and his rule became increasingly authoritarian. He banned the veil for women, imposed Western-style dress codes, and sought to secularize the nation. His disdain for traditional customs and his iron-fisted rule bred resentment among many Iranians. As World War II loomed, Reza Shah's close ties with Nazi Germany alarmed the Allies. In 1941, British and Soviet forces invaded Iran, fearing it could become a German ally. Reza Shah, now isolated and powerless, was forced to abdicate. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, barely 22 years old, was thrust onto the throne in the midst of the global conflict. The young Shah, Mohammad Reza, faced a daunting task. Iran was still under Allied occupation, and the country was rife with political intrigue. For years, he struggled to assert his authority. His reign was threatened by powerful political factions, including the Tudeh Party, a communist group, and nationalist movements that sought to free Iran from foreign influence. In 1951, a charismatic nationalist named Mohammad Mossadegh became prime minister. Mossadegh's government nationalized Iran's oil industry, which had long been controlled by the British. The move was wildly popular among Iranians, but sparked a fierce backlash from the West. The Shah, fearing for his throne and life, fled the country in 1953. But his exile was brief. With the backing of the CIA and MI6, a coup d'etat toppled Mossadegh, and Mohammad Reza Shah was restored to power. In 1963, he launched the White Revolution, a series of sweeping reforms aimed at modernizing the country. Land was redistributed to the poor, women's rights were expanded, and new industries were established. For a time, it seemed as if the Shah's vision was coming to life. Iran's economy grew, and its cities flourished. But beneath the surface, discontent simmered. The Shah's reforms, though ambitious, alienated many segments of society. The clergy, once powerful, felt sidelined and attacked. The traditional landowners resented the loss of their estates. Even the urban middle class, who had initially supported the Shah's modernization efforts, grew frustrated with the increasing authoritarianism of his regime. The Shah relied heavily on his secret police to silence dissent. Political opposition was brutally crushed, and the Shah's rule became synonymous with repression and corruption. Meanwhile, his close ties with the United States, symbolized by lavish state visits and extravagant displays of wealth, further estranged him from his people, who saw him as a puppet of Western powers. By the late 1970s, Iran was a nation on the brink. Economic inequality, rapid urbanization, and the stifling of political freedoms fueled widespread unrest. Protests and strikes spread like wildfire across the country, uniting leftists, nationalists, and religious conservatives in a common cause: the overthrow of the Shah. At the heart of this growing revolution was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a fiery cleric exiled years earlier for his outspoken criticism of the Shah. From his exile in Iraq and later France, Khomeini's messages reached millions of disillusioned Iranians, calling for an end to the monarchy and the establishment of an Islamic government. In 1978, the protests escalated into a full-scale revolution. The Shah, now gravely ill and increasingly isolated, sought refuge in the West. In January 1979, he and his family fled Iran, leaving behind a country in turmoil. The monarchy, which had ruled Iran for centuries, crumbled, and on February 11th, 1979, the Pahlavi Dynasty came to an end. The revolutionaries, led by Khomeini, swept into power and declared Iran an Islamic Republic. The Shah, once the symbol of Iran's modernization, died in exile in 1980, far from the land he had sought to transform.